Welcome. Thank you all so much for joining us today. My name is Nicole Floyd Smith, and I am Vice President of Advocacy and Communications here at the State Collaborative on Reforming Education, or SCORE. And it's my honor to welcome you to this webinar today. We're so thrilled to have you as we do this webinar in recognition of Earth Month, and so grateful to be joined today by such a distinguished group of leaders. For those who may be newer to our work, I wanted to take a moment to introduce you to SCORE. We are a nonpartisan, nonprofit research and advocacy organization whose mission is to transform Tennessee education so that all students achieve success in the classroom, in career, and in life. We were founded 17 years ago by our host today, Senator Bill Frist, who as a physician understood from the start that education is one of the most powerful determinants of long-term health and well-being. We have three goals that guide our work: that all students receive an excellent K-12 public education, that all students earn a post-secondary degree or credential that prepares them for a career enabling economic independence, and that historically underserved student groups see improved success across all goals relative to their peers. To achieve our goals, we work alongside partners like you across our state on four strategic priorities: great teaching and leadership, innovative school models and approaches, education to career pathways, as well as creating a supportive ecosystem. At SCORE, we know that what happens inside the classroom doesn't happen in isolation. The well-being of students, their health, their environment, the world around them, all of these things shape their ability to learn and succeed. So that's why we created our Connecting the Dots event series, to explore topics that sit just beyond our core priorities, but are deeply connected to student success. This past fall, we hosted Connecting the Dots, the environment's impact on student success, an in-person event bringing together a wide-ranging group of education, business, environmental, government, and community leaders for a full day of conversation in Nashville. Today's webinar is a direct continuation of the great conversation and collaboration that was sparked at that event, building on what we learned together and going even deeper. Today, we're shining a spotlight on one of the most exciting stories in conservation and education in our region: the creation of the Alexander Institute for Conservation Leadership and the Sciences at Maryville College. We'll begin with opening remarks from SCORE's founder and board chair and global chair of the Nature Conservancy, Senator Bill Frist. We'll then move to a fireside chat between Senator Frist and former governor of Tennessee and U.S. Senator Lamar Alexander. You'll also have the opportunity to hear from three additional experts at the intersection of education, health, and conservation through a panel discussion. It is now my great privilege to turn things over to our host, Senator Bill Frist.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us for this really important conversation. I'm Senator Bill Frist, founder and board chair of the State Collaborative on Reforming Education, and it's a real privilege to welcome all of you to today's Connecting the Dots discussion on education, conservation, and the future of Southern Appalachia. At SCORE, our mission has always been centered on ensuring that every student in Tennessee does have that opportunity to succeed. But as we've learned over time, student success doesn't just happen in a vacuum. It is shaped not only by what happens inside the classroom, the obvious, but also by the whole world students live in, the health in their communities, and increasingly their environment. This conversation is also a really personal one for me and my wife, Tracy. The Appalachian region holds a special place in our hearts. We're fortunate to have a farm there, where I am right this second. And through that experience, we've seen firsthand how important sustainable agriculture and responsible land stewardship are to building both a healthy ecosystem and a strong, resilient economy. This extraordinary region stretches more than 2,000 miles across 13 states and includes Tennessee treasures like the Great Smoky Mountains. It plays a vital role in our health, in our economy, and in our overall well-being. In addition, the Appalachians serve as a superhighway for nature, a connected and interconnected corridor that allows wildlife to move and to adapt and to thrive as species respond to warming temperatures and the changing conditions. This connectivity becomes essential, but only if we protect it. And that's why this Connecting the Dots event brings together leaders across sectors to explore how forces beyond education policy shape opportunity and long-term outcomes for students. Today's focus on Southern Appalachia is especially meaningful. This region is one of the most biodiverse in the entire country. It's rich in natural beauty and cultural heritage, but it also faces unique challenges and opportunities as environmental and economic conditions evolve. In honor of Earth Month, we'll explore how we can better prepare the next generation for careers in health and environmental science, how time spent in nature supports student well-being, and why this work is so critical, so crucial and critical for the future of our communities. And I'm especially pleased to be joined by my good friend, Lamar Alexander, a distinguished Tennessee statesman who has led on education as U.S. Secretary, served as our governor, and in the United States Senate, enacted the most important conservation legislation of our time. Now he's continuing that legacy with Maryville College to help launch the Alexander Institute for Conservation Leadership and the Sciences, an effort that can serve as a model for higher education nationwide. You know, as a doctor, I've long believed that health and education are inseparable. What we're discussing today sits right at that intersection, how the environments where children live and learn and grow directly impact their physical health and their mental health well-being and their academic success. But there's also a message of opportunity here. By connecting education and conservation, we can open whole new pathways for students, pathways that lead to meaningful careers and stronger communities and a more resilient future for Tennessee and the broader Appalachian region. I'm excited to begin this conversation with Senator Alexander and then turn to our outstanding panel to dive even deeper into these important issues. With that, let's get started. Senator Alexander, you've spent your career at the intersection of education and public service. And thinking back, what first sparked your interest in protecting our nature, our natural landscapes? And how did your passions evolve from there?
Well, thanks, Bill. And before I do anything else, I want to give a shout out to you and to SCORE for what you've done in the last 17 years in Tennessee. Not many individuals or organizations can attack a big problem like student achievement and actually see results, which you've been able to do. Then I thank you too for helping us think about it in a way that we normally don't. You know, Professor Jim Coleman at the University of Chicago said schools are for the purpose of children learning things they can't learn at home. He might have said they can't learn in the outdoors. And in answer to your question, I learned at home and outdoors about the value of the outdoors growing up right here in the foothills of the Great Smoky Mountains where Maryville College is, where my parents actually met. I mean, I went out on a snipe hunt when I was a Boy Scout. And if you go out on a snipe hunt with a bag and you stay there all night, well, you learn not to be afraid you learn confidence. That has to do with what a person needs to learn. If you're in a trail shelter on the Appalachian Trail and a bear crawls in there with you, you learn a little bit about survival. If the weather gets down 20 below degrees, as it sometimes does up there, you learn more about survival. If you go hiking 2 or 3 weekends a month, as I did growing up, you learn the importance of fitness to the rest of your life. You just don't learn that in a classroom. You experience that outdoors. You learn early on that outdoors affects your mood. And as you like to point out, there's a big connection between well-being and health. And we can go on and on. You also learn a little bit about policy. I mean, here in the Smokies, I can see the air get cleaner when the coal plants have air pollution control devices put on them, and I can know that's good for my health. And it develops my curiosity to know that David Rockefeller used to come down here from New York to study the beetles in this area where I grew up because it has more different kinds of beetles for his world-renowned collection than any other place in the world that he could find. And finally, we hear a lot of people talking about, well, is the climate really changing? Well, growing up here, I used to tell people the leaves are the most beautiful on October 15th. Today, it's closer to November 15th. There's a reason for that. So being a part of the outdoors, as Professor Coleman has said, and as Bill Frist helps to remind us, is a big part of education.
I think it's so neat to really hear your story because you grew up in the region of Northeast Tennessee, and your connection to the outdoors was a natural thing for you. And so many people today just don't have that natural opportunity today with increasing urbanization and the like. And that passion to be reflected in our current initiative is really excited. The Maryville College really this past year announced formally the creation of the Alexander Institute for Conservation Leadership in the Sciences. It's a long title, but it really does capture everything: leadership, the sciences. And you've played personally such a big role in creating both the Institute, but that whole concept, a more holistic concept. I've really enjoyed serving on the advisory board for the Institute, and Tracy and I personally have supported it with the creation of the Tracy and Bill Frist Center for Appalachian Wellness and the Outdoors, coming back to this health-centeredness and relationship and connection to the outdoors. Tell us, in your eyes, because it is in many ways a sort of a creation, working with lots of partners of a model that's a unique model, and talk a little bit about that and how you do see it shaping opportunities for students and the future of conservation in the Southern Appalachia region and beyond.
Well, thanks, Bill. Maryville College first has an advantage. It may not be Harvard or Berkeley or the University of Montana or the University of Chicago, but it has the advantage of place. It's a college in the Smokies, in one of the most biodiverse places in the world, and as you said, at the foot of this Appalachian corridor. And second, it has lots of students already, as Dr. Udi will explain later, who are already involved in doing their senior theses in things like testing the cleanness of the water in the little river, or figuring out if there's a way to create a chestnut tree that'll grow that won't be killed by blight. So Maryville College has the place and the students, and it can do local things, as you've often said, as you've helped the Institute, of national significance. So the objectives are, number one, to educate, especially the K through 12 students in the area. The Natalie Haslam Center would bring in about 6,000 of those students every year to learn more about the outdoors. Second, the Tracy and Bill Frist Center would connect, as you've tried to teach us, the outdoors and health and wellness. And then third, we'll have a center on land conservation, training students who are good at creating conservation land trusts, for example. It's estimated in the next 20 or 30 years, an area about the size of South Carolina will be lost to development. And we need more young men and women who are willing to go out there and help farmers and other landowners understand how they can protect their land.
I love it. I think that the visual that you and I have shared, and we shared just a few minutes ago, with all of the sort of migration, the importance. You see this concentration throughout Appalachia, a region that much has been extracted from in the past historically, but now contributes so much from a biodiversity global standpoint. Just recently, we had those shots from a long way from the moon and around the moon, coming back and looking at the Earth, and you see the sort of oneness. And so, yes, you start there at Maryville training leaders, but you see how that goes to a local, a regional, most biodiverse part of the United States, and then extends out across the United States and indeed across the globe with leadership, with education, with training future people who can help shape our understanding of nature and health and well-being broadly. You know, you've emphasized often the importance of education in so many ways, so many capacities, your whole life in shaping the future. As a doctor, I know that education is one of the most important factors in long-term health outcomes of an individual, the sort of integration between education and health. How, how can we better integrate this idea that nature and the natural world and the soil under our feet and the air that we breathe and the food that we eat is all essential to health into our education systems and into that world that you and I have been in, you much more than me, that world of public policy?
Well, by encouraging curiosity, and that's what the Maryville College Institute for Conservation Leadership and Sciences will help the area do. I mean, want young people, as I was saying earlier, to wonder about why they feel better if they're outdoors part of the time. Why they feel better if they're exercise, if they're fit, if they go hiking, if they why they're more confident if they learn to camp out and not be afraid of the outdoors and as I said, stay out on a snipe hunt or go hiking in the wood. So it's a matter of encouraging curiosity about the outdoors, making people comfortable in the outdoors, and then second, I think giving them opportunities as the students do with the chestnut trees or the water quality or other senior theses to to make a contribution. Here's what I can do to help protect this great outdoors that's so valuable to my health and my well-being for the next generation.
That whole concept of education it being central in a place like Maryville College being such a perfect both sense of place, but also perspective and seed of information. And we'll come to that with our panel. The integration of health is one that Tracy and I are particularly interested in because it's one that when people looked at environmental policy in the past, and conservation even, you would almost be siloed. And people would say, you know, well, that's good, but it's looking 20 years out and 50 years out and 100 years out. And the same thing with the changing climate, the warmer days that you referred to and the unstable weather patterns. People say, well, there's not much I can do about it now. And obviously, there are a lot of things you can do, but we need to be led. We need to be led with certain leaders. But I do think looking at the environment and the soil under our feet, as I said, and the air and the world around us and the changing climate through that lens of medicine always and health and well-being, because it matters to you now, your family now. It matters to your heart disease now. Pollution matters now. It affects the oxidative stress. It causes the endothelial injury that causes heart attacks, that causes strokes and causes diffuse inflammation and cancer. And it's related to those trees. It's all physiologic as well as just sort of making you feel good. So that's what the center is all about, integrating this, the sort of the reason and the why everything matters now and not just in the future. You know, kind of coming as you and I talk, both of us having been involved in policy so much, it's interesting to me that many times, especially climate change, but sometimes it's just conservation generally, becomes a partisan issue. But Tennesseans on both sides of the aisle have a unbelievably strong history of leading here. Your mentor in many ways, and mine, Howard Baker, and the Clean Air Act in 1970, and then the Clean Water Act a few years later, and the Endangered Species Act in 1973, and Governor Bredesen, Phil Bredesen, and the Land Trust, and Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth. I think it's their 20th year now from his documentary. And then Governor Bill Lee and the state parks, which we can talk about. And your Great American Outdoors Act, really a legacy leading act. But looking back, what lessons have you learned about nonpartisan support or bipartisan support for what are potentially divisive issues that could help guide this next generation of leaders that Maryville College is going to play a major role in training going forward.
Well, what I've learned is it sometimes starts, use the right words. Sometimes words attract political barnacles, but take the Great American Outdoors Act. That was a law that was passed 5 years ago, 2020, by a unusual alliance of President Donald Trump and 800 environmental groups from the Sierra Club to the NRA, and it united them around the idea of using dollars taken from drilling for energy on federal lands and using it to maintain the national parks and other public lands. So when you put it in terms of the great American outdoors, everybody stood up and saluted. There weren't there were arguments, but they weren't the kind of partisan arguments that you hear sometimes about climate change and other issues like that. So I think that in our state, one of the leaders in conservation more recently has been Governor Bill Lee. I mean, he asked the state legislature to put $12 million into the new Maryville College Institute on Conservation Leadership in the Sciences, and the legislature did that. That's a very Republican legislature and a very Republican governor. So you've got the support of duck hunters, outdoorsmen, environmentalists. Whenever you focus around the great American outdoors, you can get a lot done.
Laura, thank you so much. There's so much wisdom in what you have shared. It's just been the top of the sort of iceberg today. But thank you so much, and our audience is going to carry all of this with them. I know. Now, I want to turn and really bring in three leaders who are doing this work on the ground every day, and it's in education and conservation and environmental science and in government. Please welcome our panelists. And let me introduce them. Catherine Medlock, Appalachians Conservation Director South of the Nature Conservancy, also advisory board member of the Alexander Institute. Dr. Jennifer Udy, Chair, Division of Health Sciences and Outdoor Studies, and Associate Professor of Exercise Science, Maryville College. And Brian Clifford, Deputy Commissioner, Bureau of Conservation, Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation. Welcome to all of you. And let's just jump right in. And we'll start out. Well, I'll have a sort of a series of things that are on my mind, and we can just have a conversation. And Commissioner Brian, let me open with you. We just discussed how nature and conservation have a long history of bipartisan support in Tennessee, really nonpartisan support, which is where it should be. And Governor Bill Lee, as Lamar just said, is leading the way right now. And you're the first ever, I think that's key, the first ever director of the Office of Outdoor Recreation, and now lead the state's Bureau of Conservation. Explain to us and elaborate it and talk to us a little bit about why has Governor Lee made preserving and increasing access to our state's natural resources such a central piece of his overall agenda?
Yes, happy to. And first of all, thank you for including us in the conversation. This is very important, not only for Governor Lee, but for our state. And your organization here in the Institute are going to do phenomenal things. I'm actually up on the Cumberland Plateau today. In between park visits, I was at Burgess Falls today, checking in on an $8 million investment we're making there. And then I get to do this with you. And then after this, I go to Bledsoe Creek to check in on another one of our state parks. So we are neck deep in the outdoors. And I'm Brian Clifford, Deputy Commissioner of our Bureau of Conservation at TDEC. I am responsible for Tennessee State Parks, state natural areas, archaeology, and of course, the Office of Outdoor Recreation. Most days I kind of think of myself as the state's groundkeeper, just trying to help keep it clean, beautiful, and fun for all of us. So excited to talk to you all today. Governor Lee has a strong personal conviction for the outdoors, and you have seen that through his administration. And I think that really starts with a genuine love of the outdoors that he will tell you came through his childhood, and he brought it forth with him to where he is today. And even in this administration, he started his very first executive order was focused on rural communities. And that's where a lot of our most desirable outdoor assets are in rural Tennessee. So it was hand in hand of developing rural communities, but protecting our natural assets from the very beginning. And the governor has been keenly interested in balancing Tennessee's exceptional growth with conservation, making sure that we conserve our land, our water, our forests, our farms, and making sure that the public has more access to the outdoors. And then when we think about the economic case of outdoor recreation, it's a $15.6 billion economic impact for Tennessee. And uniquely to Tennessee, we're seeing a 20% increase year over year. So the focus and the investments that we're making, that Governor Lee has pushed, are really paying off at a level of 20%, which is unique in any industry to see a 20% year over year growth. And then, of course, there's a huge health case here. You all have talked about this already, but when people can hike and fish and paddle and walk and gather outdoors, we improve our physical, our mental, and our social health. And Senator Frist, you're the physician here. I don't want to get out of my lane, but I feel like the outdoors is probably one of the cheapest preventative medicines we could ever think of. It just makes us feel better. It improves a lot of things about our bodies and our health and our social aspects. And the governor's been very serious about this. His conservation agenda has been backed by some pretty big action, creating the first ever Office of Outdoor Recreation for the state of Tennessee, his strong conservation strategy, investments and access to the outdoors, his Blue Ways TN program, turning many of our state's waterways into world-class recreation waterways. And then, of course, Governor Lee will have opened more state parks than any administration in Tennessee's history. That level of investment has been generational, and I personally am very thankful for the governor's vision and commitment to that. And that shows also here with his encouragement and push to invest in the Institute for Conservation Leadership in the Sciences and the Lamar Alexander Institute. And I think at the end of the day, the governor knows that to grow Tennessee well, we have to conserve Tennessee. And that has been his approach in this administration. And I'm just thankful to be here and help share his perspective and a little bit about why the investment of this institute is so important.
Yeah, it's really helpful because in the macro sense, I kind of look at this as telescoping and widening the lens. And in many ways, that widened lens with the governor breaking down barriers that allow individuals and individual families to connect with nature, better access, better recreation, more state parks, being on the land, hugely important from policy. Dr. Udi, let's kind of take the lens down. You're there at Maryville, and your research specifically focuses on the relationship between the human body, physical activity, outdoor time, health in children and adults. Tell us a little bit about the latest data about this intersection of nature and human health and how it impacts students' ability, for example, to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks everybody for having me. As Senator Frist mentioned, my name is Dr. Jenny Udi. I'm a faculty member at Maryville College in the Division of Health Sciences and Outdoor Studies. And our students explore majors, including exercise science, oftentimes going on to physical therapy, occupational therapy, they're athletic trainers, they're coaches. We have the health and wellness promotion major, which is training public health professionals and students who want to work in various levels of community organizations. We have our healthcare nursing major. We have our physical education with licensure, so training students for boots on the ground in the school system, helping children be active. And then we have our outdoor studies and tourism major as well, which is really a nod to what Brian had mentioned from the Office of Outdoor Recreation and that growing and really bustling industry of outdoor rec and tourism for the state. And so here in our little neck of the woods, we do a lot related to getting people outside, to supporting their health. And this is a really exciting topic for me. I'll echo some of Brian's discussions surrounding Governor Lee and the Bureau of Conservation's commitment to natural spaces. And what I think is so impactful about something that Senator Alexander said, and also something that Brian said, is that these individuals, Senator Alexander, Governor Lee, who are making these investments at the state level now or into things like the Alexander Institute, both had really meaningful experiences as children in the outdoors. And I don't really think we can overstate the importance of those early experiences for kiddos, getting outside and seeing nature and going fishing and spending time on the water. I know Catherine's going to talk about that a little bit later too, I'm sure. But maintaining and increasing access to those natural spaces is absolutely imperative for child health and development. And the research is really pretty clear that time outdoors is truly one of the simplest, highest impact things that we can do for our children. Giving them opportunities, whether that looks like playing in the backyard or in a local park, visiting our growing number of state parks or the national park right down the road. Later, we'll talk a little bit about outdoor education spaces and what children have access to right in their own schoolyard. So whether that's a outdoor laboratory or even a playground, how can we use those spaces in order to improve their development and their health? I will say some of the recent data has been really exciting as we think about Tennessee's commitment to blueways. And so historically, we talk a lot about parks and greenways and how important it is for children to have access to green spaces. Increasingly, we're seeing conversations surrounding blue spaces as well. And I think that is a really important metric that we're thinking not just about parks, but about opportunities for children to spend time on the water, rivers, lakes, opportunities to fish, and also to kayak or paddle. And so I think all of those pieces are really important for this larger child health puzzle, and I really appreciate the state's commitment to that. So thank you. An obvious place for me to start is physical activity as an exercise physiologist. And I know Senator Frist, as a former heart and lung surgeon, you know all about the physiological piece here. It's so easy to be sedentary these days. There's screens, there's all sorts of ways for kids to be stuck. And so I think just making sure that they have time to spend outdoors for their mood, for their mental health, and then for that classroom component is absolutely critical. So,
Yeah, thank you so much, Jennifer. And you're right there at Maryville. You see the students, you see probably better than any of us on the call, the importance of leadership in this area of connecting the nature to leadership, to health, and to education. Catherine, you've heard so much from what people have said today, but you are probably the Southern Appalachia expert on the webinar today as a scientist and as a policymaker in your work with the Nature Conservancy. Southern Appalachia is often described as one of the most biodiverse regions really in the world, but clearly in this country. From your perspective as a scientist with a career in natural resources protection, why does that biodiversity matter? Why does biodiversity matter? And what does it mean when we start thinking of these categories of health and livelihood and career and future of the people who live and work in the region?
Well, first of all, I just want to say how grateful I am to be part of this panel. It's a wonderful discussion, and I really appreciate that opportunity. I think that Senator Alexander stated it really well, as did you, that the Southern Appalachian Mountains are incredibly biodiverse. Certainly, one of the most biodiverse places in North America. They rank out among the most biodiverse places in the world, particularly for freshwater species, fish, crayfish, freshwater mussels, salamanders. We're the center of biodiversity for salamanders. But besides just being an interesting fact or a superlative, I think we want to talk about why biodiversity matters for people. It's obviously good for human health and well-being in many ways. We've already that Dr. Udi's already discussed, like clean water, clean air, the amount of recreational opportunities it provides, from like high elevation spruce hiking around Mount LeConte that feels like a magical fairyland, to fly fishing in our rivers, and everything in between. So it provides a lot of options, which I think is really, really important. But then there are some ways that are maybe less obvious, but no less important. I like to think about resiliency in our ecosystem the same way that maybe your financial advisor might encourage you to diversify your financial assets. It means that, like, if one of them takes a hit, it doesn't collapse the whole thing. And that's true for our ecosystems in the Appalachians as well. As climate change continues and we have more extreme weather events, droughts, floods, storms, our diversity provides resilience in that system. And that doesn't mean that the events won't happen. They will. And Hurricane Helene actually provided a really unfortunate example of that. But it does mean that our environment has more capacity to absorb those impacts and recover from them more quickly. So that's really important for us, for human health and well-being. And I would be remiss if I did not add that biodiversity and resilience in our system, it needs stewardship. It will not persist without care and attention. So yes, the region is incredibly biodiverse, and that absolutely matters for our human health and well-being. But it also provides us an opportunity to have a reciprocal relationship, to care for that environment that sustains us. So it can create a really beautiful circle if we uh, if we engage in that.
Yeah, I love the word you use, and it comes back to what Lamar said when we were a little bit earlier. A lot of it's framing the issue and the words that you hear, all of us, because it's where truth is, the word you used just then, stewardship, um, which really takes you to sort of legacy type things. That's kind of what you want to be remembered for. And responsibility, and caring, the third term that you mentioned, which is very different than maybe even 20 years ago when a lot of people looked at the environmental movement. It was, we got to sacrifice. It's going to cost you something. It's the moral right thing to do, and therefore you got to bleed for it. And just listening to the words of all of you today, all three of you, and with Lamar, four of you, it's much more this optimistic. It's a framing of stewardship, responsibility, caring, the future, training new leaders, big challenges, but addressing them in a way that makes sense to today. So, really appreciate your words. Dr. Udi, let me come back to you because we began down this line. Why is this sort of hands-on outdoor learning central, fundamental, kind of the node to how the Alexander Institute prepares future environmental scientists and healthcare professionals? And I guess it brings me to thinking, how does that commitment extend to expanding those experiences for K through 12 students and teachers, and particularly in underserved communities?
Yeah, and Senator Alexander led into it a little bit with his conversation earlier about curiosity and wonder, I think is a really important leveraging component that we have. The hands-on outdoor learning component is absolutely critical to the work that we do at Maryville College. It's what makes us distinctive. And it's also so distinctive in the Alexander Institute that we'll have more opportunities to do that even better. Fields like environmental science and healthcare are inherently applied and very, very place-based. They don't exist in vacuums, or the term you used earlier, silos, right? They cross over, they intermingle. The impact of environmental health and human health are inherently linked and absolutely cannot exist without each other. And so we really see students come to life when we let them step outside of the classroom and into these real world settings where they can experience these concepts firsthand and understand how they connect across multiple disciplines. That multiple discipline connection is absolutely critical for them. Within the Alexander Institute, that's going to look like intentionally designed spaces and exhibits and programming that bring together conversations for students surrounding conservation, environmental health, and human health. We're using the Institute itself as a living learning landscape where students can move beyond theory in that traditional classroom space and really start to hone analytical skills, critical thinking skills, and then the application of that. And so I love that for our students training in futures for future careers like healthcare, right? Understanding and be able to connect the fact that health isn't just influenced by a series of individual choices, that it's influenced by policy. It's influenced by environmental health. It's influenced by the communities that their patients live in. And really well-trained environmental scientists will understand that component about human health as well, to understand how they play off of each other. And I'll say anecdotally, my most impactful moments as a teacher have been when you see students, to play off our title, connect the dots on that, right? You bring them in for a heart dissection or the Little River water quality work, where we can actually see it and feel it and touch it and understand how all of those pieces are integrated together. And it's a powerful moment for a teacher. It's a powerful moment for a student. It's a powerful moment for their families to see that student launch into something that they're really excited about. I'll say that our same commitment to our students at Maryville College extends to the work that we'll do in the K-12 sector and with students and teachers there. We really want to focus on creating high quality, meaningful outdoor learning opportunities that spark that curiosity, that play off of that, and then further help students start to imagine what those careers might be like in the future, what they might spend their time and the things that they're passionate about. A lot of you know there's very few things more powerful than a curious child, right? If you've ever had the 82 questions following the conversation. And so I think it's important that we learn how to harness that and really play into it and help them ask good questions. Ultimately, this approach, the work of the Institute and the centers like the Frist Center for Appalachian Wellness in the Outdoors, it's going to expand all of that access in a really meaningful way. We want students to come and learn about the environment, to connect that learning to real world issues, and then connect that to their role as a future leader who's capable of solving those challenges and contributing to those issues. And we want students, no matter what community they live in or what background they're coming from, to hear that message, that they matter, that they're an important part of this puzzle, and that what they're learning is going to contribute to a better Tennessee and a better Southern Appalachia. So,
Jennifer, yeah, I love the way you say that. And as you're talking, I'm listening, and I see individual students and their families and the opportunities that will naturally be opened up because of what Lamar said. It's a sense of place. And as you're speaking, I see a big map, and I see the place of Maryville College, and I see where it is in the middle of the Appalachian, 2,000 miles and 13, 14, 15 states and on up into Canada. And then I see the whole country, and then I see the world itself, and this sense of place of being in a biodiverse area with curricula that are built around leadership and exploration and connecting, as you said, connecting the dots. It's that kind of repeated concentric circles, which are so exciting, this sort of local to global training coming in. Catherine, you and I both work with the Nature Conservancy, which is one of the larger, and you have to always be careful when you say that, conservation organizations in the world in 80 countries and obviously all 50 states, and has 1,000 scientists like you looking at the issues surrounding biodiversity and climate resilience coming in. But more than anybody else on here, you kind of take us right back, and that's sort of the big global, but then you take it right back to this sense of place because you were once a student at Maryville College. And now you have dedicated your career to preserving the Southern Appalachian region, and the college itself is situated right there, that sense of place. What role do institutions like Maryville College and the Alexander Institute play in preparing students, not just academically, but as leaders and problem solvers in this space?
Well, I think Dr. Udi did a really great job of teeing me up for that. But I absolutely loved my time at Maryville College, and I can vividly remember the day that I realized what I wanted to be when I grew up. I had always loved the outdoors and cared for nature. I was a biology major, a member of staff at Mountain Challenge, which, if you're not familiar with the Mountain Challenge program at Maryville College, you should check it out. It's a great program. But it was on a field trip with a biology class at Maryville College. Very much what Dr. Udi was kind of describing. That I discovered a couple of things. One, I think that was the first time that I'd ever heard the importance of Southern Appalachia from a biodiversity perspective and how special it was. I may have heard that in other places, but that was the first time it was real for me. And it also kind of had an epiphany that day that it was work that I could do for a living. I could make a living potentially doing conservation work in Southern Appalachia. We were standing in the middle of a stream and and we were in the little river. And there were professors at Maryville College that encouraged me, that challenged me, and that set the stage for me to do the work that I do today. Um, I think I think it's important, and we kind of hit on this a little bit, but I think it's really important for us to remember that nature not only sustains us physically, but also mentally and spiritually. You know, it inspires us. It provides a kind of renewal when we walk outdoors, for people of all walks of life, not just those of us that like make it our chosen career field, but for everybody. And I really believe strongly that providing those kind of hands-on experiences that we're talking about that are based in a place, particularly the place, like a place as awe-inspiring as the Southern Appalachians, that provides a foundation for lifelong growth and learning that you just can't replicate any other way. And I feel like that I feel that the Alexander Institute is positioned to do just that. From the very beginning, from the first time I heard about the Institute, and my understanding really from its inception was that it was rooted in providing those types of opportunities. And I can't tell you how proud I am to be a part of it. It does feel very much like a kind of a full circle for me. Um, I'm very excited about it for the current community members out there and also for future generations. It's really exciting.
I think the excitement, it really is infectious because you now you have a place that really has this holistic view in bringing education and leadership and conservation and resilience, a key word that y'all brought forward, all together, and a pathway that's optimistic. It's full of energy coming forward. At the Frist Center there, I'm really excited because it will have a place that unites what we call planetary health, and that kind of sounds like too big, with human health, the individual. And you just mentioned it. It's physical health, but it's also mental health, and it's also spiritual health. And that's what really makes us who we are as people. It's the kind of legacies we want to leave. And when we think of health, we think as you know, a surgeon, so I think of heart disease and the way the world around us affects the heart and the human heart and the coronary arteries I used to operate on every day, and the lungs, which are in constant conversation with the nature in terms of the air coming into our bodies, affecting asthma and COPD and allergies coming in, but also, as you mentioned, affecting the mental health of everybody, the 8 billion people of the world. It has affected that environment, and it's the soil, and it's the air, and it's the water, and it's how warm it is outside. And then also vulnerable populations. We know all of the things that the environment does. If it's a hotter day, it has a disproportionate impact on vulnerable populations of people who don't have other resources. So many points have come forward. Brian, let me turn back to you. My earliest days, sort of really being in nature. I was on nature growing up, but were at the time in state parks in Tennessee, Cumberland Mountain State Park. That was our family vacation, our only family vacation every year for 10 years. But the Lee administration has, in addition to the state parks, made this investment in the creation of this institute. Why is this a priority for Tennessee?
Well, Senator, you mentioned the spiritual health just now, and Catherine mentioned spiritual aspects too. And many know that Governor Lee's a very faithful spiritual person, meaning his administration are as well. I am too. And I think we understand that God made Tennessee beautiful and abundant, and it's our job to help conserve it. So I think when this opportunity and this vision came up, Governor Lee and the administration jumped at making the investment to help make this happen. And thinking through why, I think a lot of it is that Tennessee needs a pipeline of future teachers and scientists and land managers and outdoor leaders who understand conservation and the importance of access to our outdoors. And when you think about where, as you mentioned all throughout this program today, Southern Appalachia is just one of the country's most ecologically important areas. And then I know you have been there, but for those that haven't, Maryville College sits right at the foothills of the Great Smoky Mountains. When you're on campus, you see the beauty of Tennessee and the importance of nature right there at that college. So you really can't think of a better place to do that. And the governor described it as being a base camp for conservation learning. That's how he framed this idea in his kind of sixth grade understanding of what this means, a base camp for conservation leadership. And that makes so much sense of what's there or where you can go from this base camp to the Great Smokies, to some of our state parks, the Obed River's just an hour north. There's so much in this region that folks can get their hands on and learn from and become those conservation leaders. And as Tennessee grows, we need to protect those natural resources. And we need to make sure that we are cultivating those types of leaders that can do it. And it's exciting that this also gets to carry on the legacy of Senator Lamar Alexander and everything that he's been able to do to improve the country's outdoors, but particularly Tennessee's outdoors and the conservation work that we're doing. So it's great to recognize him and his leadership there. And this institute is going to be just a phenomenal place for conservation leaders. And I think at the end of it, if we want conservation to last, we have to invest in those people who will help lead it next. And I think that's very important. So I'm thankful for the chance to share a little bit about Governor Lee's vision here. So thank you for that. And thank you for letting me share a little bit with you today.
No, thank you, Commissioner. I think just to give everybody a heads up, I kind of want to close here because we have just a few minutes, but want to ask each of you that if we get this thing right, which we will, and we are, and that is, what is this thing? It really is, if we invest in programs like this that are at this intersection of education and health and conservation, what could Tennessee look like in 10 to 20 years? And how could each of us play a role in this overall challenge? So think about that. In fact, Jennifer, I'll come to you first, and then I'll ask Catherine and Brian just to, a minute of from each of you. But I keep thinking of place, which Lamar mentioned, and which we all identify. And I said the state parks, and Lamar will say, everybody will say something different. And then we go to the people, because the people are the integral part of it, and the resilience and that we embed in what people do. And then it goes to partnerships, and the center itself is all about partnerships and will be about partnerships. The whole institute will as we go forward. And then the policy, and Brian, you represent that on this particular call. And if we get those four things right, this is going to go a long, long way. Jennifer, and then Catherine and Brian, each of you just take a minute or so. I think we do have to bring things to close, or a minute and a half or so, about 10 to 20 years from now, and how can we play a role? Jennifer?
Yeah, thank you. For me, it's about building a healthier Tennessee. I think we see healthier children, healthier families, healthier communities, that long-term impact on a state where the people are more connected. They're connected to their health, they're connected to their environment, to their neighbors, and to each other. I think that's a really powerful work that Maryville College can do. We talk all the time about doing work on the largest possible scale. And I think that the work of the Alexander Institute will do just that. It will allow us to invest in students and curriculums and programs and community partnerships that build more resilient communities, stronger workforces prepared to meet all of these unique challenges, and we'll have more students who are not only succeeding academically, but developing a sense of place, a sense of identity, a sense of responsibility to a region that they live and play in. And I think that's just really important and is going to be incredible to get to watch over the next 20 years. So thank you.
I love it. I love it. Catherine?
She said, gosh, said that really well, but I would say very similar, an engaged community full of citizens, especially young people, building a community with sustainable livelihoods. I think centering that in reciprocity and engagement with the environment that matters to those people in place. Um, yeah, and I think that the institute is going to be a really wonderful launch pad for. I mean, the college has already been that for a long time, but I think so. It's a perfect place for us to launch that even further.
I
I'm
think
happy to be a part of it.
I love it. I mean, that whole, and you've used the word several times, but engagement is critical, and that implies the partnership. It implies a vision
Absolutely.
that really Lamar has had, but all of us engaging whatever way we can, each in our own way, and then collectively having an impact that will keep on doing the words of stewardship and responsibility and caring that seem to have come up. Commissioner?
Yeah, I guess the beauty of going last, I had a few seconds to think about this. So I think if we get this right, there could be three things. One, that we have a healthy and thriving outdoor space in Tennessee, something that's doing really well in our outdoors. Two, that our people are healthier, that we have positive health outcomes based on the improvements to our outdoor spaces, conserving our outdoor spaces, getting people more active in those outdoor spaces. And then third, we have a deep bench of conservationists that are trained, ready, and willing to carry that conservation mantle forward for Tennessee to help us be a leader in conservation across the country, especially because of what we have here, like the Southern Appalachian Region. So that's what I would love to see in 10 to 20 years.
Commissioner, I love all three, and I just have to slip it in. Thanks for your public service and what you're doing, both increasing sort of the definition, but the time that you spend and thoughtfulness coming through in public service.
Thank you.
Well, as we come to the top of the hour, I do want to thank each of our panelists, Catherine, Jennifer, and Brian, and especially, of course, Senator Lamar Alexander, the passion, the expertise that's been reflected in the conversation today, I think has been impressive to me, really quite extraordinary. And I know our audience leaves with a deeper sense by just hearing people's words and interaction of both the urgency, this is the time for the Institute and the place, and the extraordinary opportunity that will unfold before us. Southern Appalachia is special. Its landscapes are irreplaceable. They're finite. And the young people who will steward this region deserve the kind of investment and preparation that the Alexander Institute represents. I want to say thank you to Maryville College and to everyone who has made this institute possible. And I want to thank in particular SCORE for hosting this conversation, an extension of the connecting the dots, and for continuing to ask the hard questions and to look at student success in its most fullest sense. As an aside, a recording of today's webinar will be shared via email. Appreciate all of our listeners and viewers from around the country who tune in with us today. But the recording can be distributed, and we encourage that. Please do share it widely. The next steps after today are not the same for everyone. Everybody probably heard something a little bit different, but everyone is aligned. Everyone is united. So I hope that you leave here inspired, as I certainly am, and I hope that inspiration turns into real action in whatever role you play. Thank you all for being with us and look forward to staying in touch.